Hello. Welcome to Strange Conversations. It is Thursday, February 24th, and I'm super excited about hanging out with our guest tonight. Hey, Jordan. Hi, Cody. Campfire's here. Tate's here. Hello.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Fantastic. I've been looking forward to this. So
Yay!
I'm
I'm
excited.
excited.
Yeah, I really appreciate you making time for me. I know you're super busy all the time. So,
I'm excited to be here.
oh, well, thank you. I would love it if you would tell anyone who's listening a little bit about you, if they may not know who Heather Moser is already.
Well, I am a researcher for Small Town Monsters, help produce some things. I write and um yeah, that's it. I research and write is pretty much it, just in various forms. So,
Okay.
yeah.
No big deal. That's it.
Uh, you know, I have a podcast called The Lore You Know
Yes.
on the STM Broadcasting Network, which is on YouTube
Yes.
and then can be streamed elsewhere. So there's that. So I podcast.
It's a really good
But
show.
thank you.
Yes. No, I really enjoy it. What's something surprising about you? Maybe something that doesn't normally come up in these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know which way to go with this. Well, it's good because so much of my life is dedicated to like the weird and stuff, and that's, I mean, that's my main thing. So I feel like all of that is kind of known. But let's see. Well, on a serious note, I deal with anxiety. So I've
Me
been diagnosed with
too.
anxiety. Yay! So it's just constant worry all the time. So
Yeah.
that's something that you don't really get to talk about whenever you're just talking about the strange and the weird. But and my favorite movie is Labyrinth. I don't know.
Ooh.
There's something that never gets. I am a CM Punk fan, Cody. That's true. Yeah, I grew up watching wrestling. I did fall off whenever CM Punk left the WWE. I got to see him on his last match at Royal Rumble here in Pittsburgh before he quit. And when he quit, my heart was broken, so I kind of stopped watching from that point forward. But yeah,
Understandable. The first day I met you, you were wearing a wrestling t-shirt.
yes, yes, that's
Yeah.
right, because that was Cryptid Bash. That was my Shawn Michaels shirt. That was my first, yeah, my first, uh, my first wrestling shirt that I ever bought. I remember there used to be this department store called Ames, um, in my hometown, and it was in the men's section. They had a Shawn Michaels shirt, and I bought it, and it's from like 96 or 97. It's the same shirt. I took very good care of it because he was my favorite.
That's
So
cool.
that was the shirt that I had. Of course, when I bought it as a kid, it was like a nightgown, so I'd just wear it as a nightgown. But now, I know Cody, I know he wrestles AEW, but I suck and haven't watched it yet.
You're busy.
Uh,
You're busy. You mentioned that, the strange and unsolved is your main thing.
mhm.
How did you get to that point? What brought you there?
Well, um, probably, I think a lot of people around my age would agree that are interested in this stuff. Unsolved mysteries was a big thing. And so just watching Robert Stack talk about these terrifying
Is the
things.
man. Robert Stack is the
Yeah,
man.
yeah, I had that phone number memorized. I wish I still did. But yeah, so I remember watching that every week with my parents. And my mom always had this story about having a Ouija board when she was young, which surprised me that my grandparents bought her one, but they actually didn't buy it for her. They bought it for her sister. But either way, the fact that it was purchased at all was surprising. But I grew up hearing about this story that they got this Ouija board, and the Ouija board told them there was a spirit in the house, and her name was Elizabeth. And it freaked my aunt out so terribly that, and Elizabeth lived in my mom's room, supposedly. It freaked my aunt out so terribly that she made my grandmother burn it. Years
Wow.
later, when they went to sell this farmhouse, and they were going through the old deeds and stuff, they found Elizabeth on one of the first deeds, Elizabeth Leidy. And so I actually wrote, now that I'm older and know how to research stuff, I actually went down this rabbit hole a couple years ago for Shannon LeGros's Weird Writer blog for Into the
Hmm.
Fray,
Mm-hmm.
and went back and traced who Elizabeth was and so on. So that was kind of cool. But I
That's
don't know.
insane.
That was
Wow.
just, yeah. And so I was like in, I don't know. I don't know if it was first or third grade. I can't remember anymore when they bought me my first Ouija board. So probably closer to third grade now that I think about it. But
Wow.
yeah, so and it's just always been, I don't know, it's always been there.
So this stuff has been with you pretty much since the get-go, like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
beginning. Wow.
yeah. And it just caught my
Wow.
attention, so I just stuck with it, even if it wasn't so, in the forefront of my life at the time. I liked magicians. That used to be a big thing in the early 90s, the magicians on TV. Um,
Yeah.
like David Copperfield and I don't know some of the other ones. That was just a big name then. And then when I was in high school, this dude named Chris Angel came out.
Yeah. Mind freak.
That's
Yeah.
right. And the first time that I saw him, I still like he's as much as he may get shit talked. Um, I remember his first special was like on, I don't know, some family channel, and my
It's like
brother had taken
TLC or
me.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, my brother had taken me to Mansfield Reformatory for their haunted house. I think it was the first year that they opened it up as a haunted house. And when we came back home, so I was like 16, my mom was like, "Hey, there was this show on, I don't, whatever the channel was." She's like, "We thought you might like it." And it was an hour-long special, and it was Chris Angel. He had the long hair. He didn't have any like facial hair or anything. Long hair, and I was just starstruck at that point. I was like, "Oh my gosh." So then later when he came out with the Mind Freak show, I was watching every episode until he got into the parts where he would like put hooks through his skin and stuff. I can't handle that.
Yeah. I'm not big
I'm
on
like,
that.
that's
Yeah.
like mind over matter stuff. I don't now. Just show me. I'm a sucker for magic tricks. I don't want to know how they
Yeah.
work, but if somebody does a magic trick for me, I lose my mind. Um,
See, that's a cool fact about you. That's pretty
yeah.
cool.
Well, when I was in my freshman year of
Excuse me.
college, I'm not going to remember the name of the show, but there was a girl in my class who was a magician. She went to like Neo UCOM, which around here I don't think it's called Neo UCOM anymore, but she ended up being a doctor, is what I'm trying to say. But freshman year, you're taking all the LERs. We were in an English class together, and Chris Angel got brought up because I was still geeking out about him at the time. And she's like, "Well, I'm a magician." And every day she would do a different trick for me. And later, her name's Angela Funovitz. She actually was on TV in some like reality show where they had magicians like face off, and that Uri Geller
Cool.
and Chris Angel was one of the hosts, like one of the judges.
See, I
And I
know Uri
remember,
Geller. Wow.
yeah, I sent her a message and I'm like, "You are so lucky. You're getting to hang out with Chris Angel." But yeah, she's been around the world doing that. I mean, she's still like I think she's a dermatologist now, but yeah, she was good, and she's actually sent me tips for like books to give my kids if I want them to, if I can convince them to learn magic tricks. But
That's
yeah,
really cool. I think
yeah,
maybe magic should be required for kids at some point, like,
you,
you know,
I think
introductory.
so.
I'm just
I've
spitballing, but
Yeah, I mean, I've when they were little and they're not paying as good attention as they are now. You could trick them pretty easily with stuff like pretend that something was behind their ear and pull a coin out or something, and it was great to watch their reaction. But I can't do like real magic. I can't do that.
that's so cool. I did not know you were into magic. That's very interesting. Very cool.
Yeah,
You're also a contributor for the feminine macabre. Macabre? I never know how to pronounce that
macabre.
word.
Yeah,
Macabre, yeah. I always trip over that. Could you tell us a little more about that? Like what they do? Because it's fantastic stuff.
yeah. So Amanda Woomer, who is known as Spook Eats on social media, I saw as actually in the Singular Fortean Society group on Facebook a year or so ago. I saw Amanda posts a thing about this journal that she wanted to be all female journal of paranormal or cryptid related writers. And so that was the inaugural journal, and she was open for submissions, and I got accepted into that one. And that one, I covered cursed objects, specifically the letters that accompany cursed objects when they're returned to places. So the rocks returned to the Bell Witch Cave is kind of what I focused on. And then now it's these porcelain dolls that are painted and sold at the gift shop. Now they're getting returned as well. And so that's what that was. I actually gave a talk on that at the Dead of Winter conference in Alton, Illinois, a couple weeks ago, and brought my dolls along for show and tell, which was fun. But the second journal, then, it was received so well, the Feminine Macabre was, that Amanda had a second round of it, which I missed the deadline on that. So then I'm like, all right, for the third one, I want to try again. So I got accepted into the third one. It comes out, I think, next month.
Oh, wow.
And that article that I contributed to that is, I called it Facing the Faceless. And it's essentially, I went through old newspaper articles and found stories of headless ghosts that have actual theories attached to who they are. And then I tracked down living relatives, like, because this is like the early 1920s, the person that I cover in this journal, or in this article, tracked down some descendants and asked them for info, like, do you have a picture of this person? Because now they're just in history, if you look back through headless ghosts, if you actually want to take the time to look for, they're just in history as a headless ghost. So tell me about them as a person. Give me a picture so we can have a face to them. And so I've got the pictures, and I talked to what would have been this man's, I think, great niece, who's into genealogy, and she told me some stories about him, and so on. And then it was a horrible, actually, it was an explosion on a farm, and a boiler exploded, and it decapitated the one guy, and there were several others burned. But it was interesting, the story of who the man was beforehand, and then his son that survived but was severely injured, what he went on to do with his life. So that's all kind of covered in there. And I hope to be part of a larger project someday. I've got a handful of names and headless ghost stories, so I want to track those people down and see if I can get a hold of family members and stuff, so they're remembered for who they are and not just the spooky story left behind, even though that's cool too. But I mean, anyway.
That's fascinating, though. No, like, you're tracing the folklore back to where it starts and then connecting with that person's family. That's incredible. Wow.
Thanks.
Really can't wait to see that. Yeah. That's
and what's
really
crazy cool. Is the descendant that I got a hold of is she's in Anchorage, Alaska, which we're already looking into Alaska for the next on the trail of Bigfoot. So I was already looking at Anchorage things as I was diving into this stuff for the Feminine Macabre, and when I saw it was Anchorage, I'm like, whoa, that's cool. So
wow.
I don't know, we probably won't have time to meet her when we're there, but I would really love it if I could.
You do the scheduling, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's what I've heard.
do.
That's just what I've heard.
I do, but it's I don't know if I can convince everybody to be like, hey, we're going to stop at this other place. It has nothing to do with our filming, but, just give me 2 hours. You guys do whatever. Yeah, I don't know if I can make that work. But, yeah.
Well, speaking of On the Trail and Small Town Monsters, I'd love to know how you got your start working with those guys, because I've been a loud fan of your guys for a while, so I always love to hear how you folks got started. Yeah.
That's I appreciate that. That's it started because, well, the first movie that STM did was Minerva Monster, and I currently live in Minerva. I grew up in Carrollton, which is, if it matters to anybody, the rival of Minerva, and with high school sports and stuff. So I was just down the road, and having this documentary come out with something that was very close to my hometown got my attention. And then I followed the successive films that came out, and basically when Mothman of Point Pleasant came out, and there was not that they hadn't gone into history before, but there was more, at least in my opinion, more folklore kind of dedicated to Mothman of Point Pleasant. that's when I was like, oh, dude, this is something that I'd love to do someday. Um, and so I contacted Seth on social media and just told him that I appreciated the research that he put into it. Because I went to school for classical studies, um, which is a lot of deep research. And I was at that time in the process of, I think at that time I was in the process of finishing up my master's thesis, which was deep research. So then once that was finished, I missed researching.
Hmm.
And I just kept in touch with Seth, and I'm like, if you need help on anything, let me know, because I don't mind. Like, I love looking through old stuff and connecting dots. And what I ended up doing was starting to look into cursed objects on my own, which brought me to the Bell Witch stuff. So then whenever they announced that they were doing the Bell Witch, I was like, hey, I might be
Hey,
able to help you on that one.
that's
Um,
so cool.
and so that's kind of how it started. Seth actually brought me on for Momo, to find witnesses for that, and then Bell Witch was like two things later. But with each one, it seems I get to help more and more different aspects. Like my role's always evolving in some form. But that was pretty much it. Was they got my attention, and then I just kept up, and then said, "Hey, you want help? Do you want help? Do you want help?" Until I was let in.
That's so cool. That's so cool though. You're like, I'm gonna do research for these people now.
Yeah. I mean, not saying you have to let me in, but if you want, I
But you
have
really ought to think about
all the info. No, just kidding. But yeah.
it. Already done all the research and the writing and everything for you. Uh, how do you go about finding your witnesses? Because I've heard you're the one that pretty much does that these days.
hmm Um, well, with each project, that's a little bit different. But I mean, a lot of times with witnesses, you start with things like social media. I mean,
Hmm.
depending on the age of the story that we're going into, social media doesn't do a lot of good for like the Bell Witch or something
Yeah.
necessarily. Um, I mean, it can, I guess, if you want more modern things, but when you're looking historically, that doesn't really do you too much good. But social media, websites, if people have shared their stories and they haven't done so anonymously, I can usually track them down. Um, then there's a lot of times it's word of mouth or
Hmm.
just coincidence. Like you start to know other researchers, and they might know someone who may be willing to talk. So then it goes into talking to these people to see if they're willing to come forward. Um, and then some of it's just coincidence. Like there's for night visitors, there's a man that speaks that it was pure coincidence that I even found him. He'd never shared a story before. And I found him because I was looking for witnesses, and I'm thinking, okay, who in this particular area of Colorado could I contact that may know someone with a story? And I thought, well, this was like near the Crestone area, and Crestone's like got a bunch of new age stuff going on. So I contacted people that um, advertise themselves as like shamans and healers and things. Because I thought
Hmm.
if you had a traumatic experience, maybe you'd go to somebody like this and tell them I had such and such experience. So I contacted this shaman, and I said, I know this is going to sound really weird, but have you had anybody who's had an experience with UFOs and might be willing to talk? And she's like, no, I don't. And then she messaged me like an hour later, and she's like, actually, my ex son-in-law had an experience, but I'm not supposed to know about it. He had an experience and he told his wife at the time, and then she told her mom. But she said, I don't know if he'd be willing to talk or not. Let me message him. And so she messaged him, and he said he'd be willing to talk. And so then I talked with him on the
Wow.
phone a handful of times, and he basically saw it as a way by speaking out on it, to kind of close that chapter a little bit, move on, because
Yeah.
he'd never really dealt with it too much. Um, but it's funny because in the final cut of the film, he says something like, the final cut of the film, we ask him, I mean, I don't know if it was Shannon or Seth that asked him, how did, who did you tell your story to or whatever? And he said, well, my wife. But I'm almost positive that in the moment he says, my wife, who told her mom, even though she wasn't supposed to. And here I am, like something like that. Like he wasn't ever planning on sharing this story, but
Wow.
it was just coincidence for that one. So
Wow.
sometimes that lines up, but yeah.
So it's kind of a combination of things, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. For the older
Wow.
stuff, I would go to like newspaper articles, find names there, keep my fingers crossed that the people are still alive. Um, because some of them, I mean, they were in their 30s or 40s, uh, in the 60s or 70s or whatever, and they may not still be with us. So then it's okay. Do their descendants have things to say? Um, and then tracking people down that way. So yeah, it just depends on the project as to how I approach it.
That's really interesting. I wondered that for a while because you always find these people with these very personal stories. Um,
Hmm.
you know, what is something essential about interviewing these witnesses and, getting them to a place where they'll open up? Because a lot of times these accounts are really personal, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I have to do, well, I try to be, not try to be, I tell them up front that who I am, why I'm contacting them, and let them know that it's for a documentary.
Hmm.
So step one, you're going to be on camera. Um, because a lot of people will talk to me on the phone, but they're not going to say anything on camera. They don't want their face shown. Or on occasion, people will talk to me and eventually say, okay, you can film me, but you've got to blur out my face.
Hmm.
That's rare, but that happens. Um, but just talking to them and getting to know them a little bit, letting them know that it's, you know, I do, I am interested in your story, but also like, I would still like to be your friend too. I mean, I still keep in touch with all these people. I just sent a letter out to somebody from Rougarou not too long ago because I
Oh,
promised him I'd be
wow.
a pen pal. So, um, yeah, I think it's just taking the time to talk to them. And I don't know, I don't know what other like what major networks are like. I hear it sometimes from witnesses who've had experiences with it, or on occasion, Seth might say something, but I don't know because I've not worked for anybody else in this
Hmm.
capacity. But like, we just had a witness for American Werewolves that when I talked to her, she was a little iffy, um, because she said, "Are you going to have me sign a waiver where you own my story?" I'm like, "What are
Hmm.
you talking about?" But she said that she'd had an experience with that, and then I asked Seth about it. He's like, "Oh yeah, I mean, this is a thing where some of these networks will, when you sign the waiver or whatever, it says that you can't retell your story for X amount of years or whatever. Like they own that story for a certain amount of time because they don't want you going to
Wow.
other networks or other shows or something." And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. This is your story.
Yeah.
Um,
It's your experience. Wow, that's
yeah,
bizarre.
but yeah, it's just talking to them, and if they're uncomfortable, I'm very clear with them. Like, if you don't want to do this, I'm not. Don't like
Yeah.
I don't want to push you. I don't want you to be uncomfortable. I've had people talk to me and tell me that every time they relay their experience, they have nightmares or something. And I'm like, okay, well, you don't have to talk to me anymore then, because I don't want you having nightmares.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then sometimes they'll talk to me anyway and say, well, no, I need to get it out there. And then other times that's it. And they don't. So yeah, I don't know, just taking the time. That's kind of the biggest thing. And I think that helps let them know as well that I'm not, I don't know, that I'm a real person. Um,
Yeah.
and I care about them and their stories and the reasoning behind it, but also it helps to say, um, especially for those who have either seen network television where it's like a joke, it's nice that I can say, well, go to YouTube and look at what we've done,
Hmm.
see how we treat. Like, because I also recognize that I am a stranger and I could be feeding them a line of bullshit and they wouldn't know. So I'm
Yeah.
like, just, hear my words, but you don't have to trust me either. Just go and look at what we've done.
Yeah.
And then that's how some people will eventually be like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing and it's not a joke. So, um,
Wow.
so it's helpful to be able to fall back on that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you guys have a really impressive body of work. I mean, it's there's a lot to point to. We've got some good audience questions. Campfire Tales question: what is the best thing STM has made, and why is it Skinwalker: Howl of the Rougarou?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Uh, um, I love that movie. I love everything about it.
Love it.
And it's because it was the first thing that I was so thoroughly involved in. I mean, I was involved in other things prior to that and since then, but really that one is the first one where every single witness was someone that I had found and made a relationship with. That's where my pen pal is now. Um, I kept in contact, checked in on all of them after the hurricane hit because it hit that whole area hard. It doesn't look the same anymore.
Yeah.
But not only did I get to know these people, but also then I was able to help do the actual research for the script and help write the script. So it was the first one that I was like all in on, in just about every aspect of it. So that one's my favorite. So good call on that one.
It is
Uh,
very good.
Thank you.
It is my current favorite, not gonna lie. Not
Yes.
gonna lie. H Ether 98, question for later whenever. Favorite historical place you'd like to visit or have visited and why? P.S. People named Heather for the win. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, heck
That's a good
yeah.
question.
It's a good name. It's an 80s name. So that's that's a eh, I don't know if it's that tough. Okay, so I'm a classicist, and which so I studied ancient Greek and ancient Rome. I haven't been to Greece yet. That's fine. I wasn't as impressed with Greece as I was Rome, but going to Rome, which I have been able to do once, was amazing. I was more excited about going to what used to be Rome's ancient port town. It's not on the coast anymore, but Ostia.
Hmm.
And that was amazing. It's an abandoned, I mean, it's in ruins. It's not all dug up. Some of it's still underground, but a vast majority of the town is there, and you just pay a little bit of money to get in the gates, and then you're left to roam around these ruins, these Roman ruins, by yourself. Um, and it's not too hot. There are trees around, so there's shade. There's still a breeze coming off the Mediterranean, and it's just beautiful. If I could go back there someday, that would be one place I'd like to go to historically. I've been to Stonehenge. That was sweet. I would really like to go to Scotland someday. I don't, well, the Isle of Skye, just because I know I have ancestors from that area.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Of the places that I've been to, Ostia Antica is probably my favorite.
That's so cool. That's like some David Weatherly world traveling, like on that level. That's really cool.
Thanks.
Cody says Minerva Monster is fucking bomb. I agree. Fantastic film. Moth Boys, Heather, what was the most stressful shoot you've been on?
The most stressful shoot that I've been on? Uh, I don't see. I try to keep the stressful stuff. I try to push that out of my mind. Or, but I mean, I wasn't on the Rougarou shoot, but it was a very stressful situation when I get a phone call from them saying that they're getting relocated from an area and they have to leave like in 10 minutes. They were approached by somebody and they're like, you got to get out. And we had another interview like en route that had driven over an hour or two to get to them to meet at this location. And Seth's like, we have to leave. They can't meet us here. We're gonna have to cancel the interview unless you can find some other place. And I was like,
Wow.
all right, give me 10 minutes. And so I start like looking at close towns, and then to avoid any problems, I called like City Hall of this little town that was nearby to make sure that we could have clearance to film in one of their parks.
Wow.
And they're like, yeah, that's not a problem. So I'm like, okay. So then I called them back. I'm like, you need to meet at this park now. Go there now. And then I contacted the other witness and I said, things have changed. Please meet at this place. And they got there. But I wasn't there for that. Had I been there for that, that probably would have been extremely stressful.
So the rest of the crew is just like
I
waiting
mean,
to
it
hear
was
back from
stressful
you.
from Ohio. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't make him wait too long. I said, give me 10 minutes, and I did it in 10. But
Wow.
I just told him, I said, get in the car and start driving, and I will get back to you in 10 minutes. But as far as ones that I've been on, I'm probably in like my brain has probably literally pushed some stuff. out. But we, I mean, in Colorado, I had an issue with somebody getting, and I don't want to do names or anything, but somebody getting kind of nasty with me because I had like talked to one of their witnesses or something. It was a researcher, and they got protective about their witness, which that's not a thing.
No, you don't
And so
own
that was,
witnesses.
yeah, so that
No.
was kind of frustrating. Um, when we were on an American Werewolf shoot, we had arranged for people to meet us at this one library. I didn't realize until we got to the library that the whole town had a mask mandate,
Hmm.
and masks don't really work well for interviews. Um, we got there, I don't know, about a half an hour before the interviewee was supposed to be there when I realized that, and they kind of had an attitude with us in the library. And so I was like, all right, well, we're not filming here. And I had to figure something out like then as the witness is showing up. And I'm like,
Wow.
okay, we're going to switch things around. So I don't know. It's a lot of the last minute stuff that comes up and you got to flip things around. But nothing too awful has happened yet, thankfully.
I mean, so you're not just writing and researching, you're also like on the ground crisis management day of.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yes, I mean, and it's also helpful whenever, like, sometimes witnesses will show up early and we don't have the set ready yet. We don't have all the cameras up or the lights situated, and
Mhm.
so it's nice. I will just talk with them, which is what I like to do anyway. I want to hear their stories, so um, I'll talk with them so they're just not hanging around waiting for
Yeah,
stuff
just
to get
standing there
finished.
watching you set up.
Yeah. So, yeah, I try to help out as much as I can. And while they're being interviewed, take notes if something comes up that I'm not, like I hadn't already known from talking to them previously, whether it's B-roll locations or whatever. Write that down so maybe we can check that out later.
That's really interesting. That's cool. I love hearing about these little behind the scenes things that you wouldn't know otherwise. Cody asked, "Will there be a Heather haunted doll toy line?" Ooh.
No, I don't think so. I think my kids would lose their minds if that were the case. They're not a fan of these dolls that I bring home. Um,
I saw.
Actually, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say I saw some pictures that you posted recently, and I was like, "My God, those are very intimidating."
Those are
Um,
from the Bell Witch Cave. Those are the ones that I brought to Alton for the conference where I talked about cursed objects.
mm,
That yeah, we that the owner of the Bell Witch Cave, Chris Kirby, paints. She buys these porcelain dolls and paints them up, her and her daughter, to look creepy, and then they sell them in the gift shop. And now people are sending them back. But yeah, I like to tease the kids about this stuff. So hold on a second. When I went to the I went to the pharmacy the other day and they had like 75% off Christmas toys. And there was this doll that I saw, and I don't know why, but it just looked kind of creepy to me. And so I was like, this is coming home.
dude.
And my oldest is with me. She's like, do not get that doll. And I said, oh, it's coming home.
Mom,
It's
can
coming
you
home, babe.
not?
Yeah, so it's here. Nothing weird has happened. I'm sure that it's not haunted, but it's fun to tease the kids. It's one of those things that you can like leave around the house and then they'll see it and mom.
Keep them on their toes, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. There are two things in life that make me very uncomfortable, and they're spiders and dolls. So
I'm with you
that's
on the spiders.
terrifying.
I'm with you on the spiders.
Lisa Thorpe asks, "Have you ever been to Waverly Hills Sanitarium, located in Louisville, Kentucky? I live close to there, and it's pretty interesting." Hmm.
No, that one's on my bucket list. That and Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, um, or Weston State Hospital. Um, I haven't been to either of those, and I really want to, but I would like to go. I mean, I'd like to go on a tour of them, like a public tour, just to get some of the story behind it and stuff. But I would really like to go in like a small group overnight investigation instead of like a public investigation. Public investigations,
Yeah.
in my experience, suck because there's a lot of people, and at least the ones I've been on, there are always people there that have no respect for everybody else, and so they're loud and just tromp up and down these hallways. They have their equipment super loud, and it's just there's not a lot that can be done. Like you can't really focus on anything. So I
You
like
can't
to go with
really
small groups.
control the investigation. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So someday I'd like to be there. Um, and then at Trains Allegheny as well.
that's really cool. Yeah. Heather says, "Drop the name of who was nasty. Me and the rest of the viewers just want to have a chat. we'll 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 s-
Nah.
we'll disseminate it privately afterwards, so we don't put anybody on blast publicly." Yeah. Oh, I'd love to ask. We've got a couple more audience questions, but I'd love to ask about the lore you know, because that's another project that you're on that's super exciting. It's your project. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Could you give us kind of like an overview of the show and how it got started?
So the lore, it started with like we were just trying to brainstorm different things that we could put on YouTube, and I was like, I just remember again a '90s kid, the more you know, coming across the screen
Yeah.
with the shooting star, and I was like, what if it's like the lore, and we talk about different folklore, and just putting that out there, and so then that evolved into talking to people who collect folklore and other researchers and stuff, and so it's an interview show. Um, with a crazy long intro that I wrote because I wanted the intro to explain what it is, and I still don't have the intro memorized. So what happens is when we when we film, Andy Matsky, sometimes it's Zach that's behind the camera, and Zach does this for me too. But I have my intro like in notes on iPhone, and they'll hold it above the camera so that I can read it because I can't memorize it yet. And it's almost without fail that I will mix up some part of it. It's never the same exact. There's always small differences. I'll like rearrange the order of what I like folklorists, story collectors, and something else. And I'm always messing it up. And I don't know if Andy keeps it in because I don't like to watch them usually after I'm done. I don't like to like really watch myself. But so one of them recently, and I can't remember who I was interviewing. I just laughed after I was done with the intro because I screwed it up so bad, and I'm like, whatever, it is what it is. But yeah, so I interview different researchers that collect stories because I mean it's important to collect the stories, but it's also important to learn from people who are the story collectors.
Hmm.
So that's pretty much what it is talking to these people and hearing their personal experiences, and I'm learning from all of them, and I'm inspired by all of them. Um, and so pretty much after every interview that I've had, I come away feeling better about myself and more inspired as a human being to do better, to do more. Um, so yeah, that's what the lore is.
That's really cool. That's really cool. That's why I like to do this in a way. But no, that's
Yeah.
awesome. And it's a great show. I was listening earlier to your most recent episode and got interrupted at work, my job. But um, who's one person, living or dead, you'd love to have as a guest?
Okay, so someone who's not with us anymore. There's a couple. I would have loved to have met Susan Shepard. I didn't get a chance to meet her. But I did look up to her greatly. And so when she passed away, that actually hit me really hard. I just barely missed meeting her because I wasn't on the final shoot that they had with her for Dark Sky. But I did set up the interview and the location and stuff. I just didn't get to go with them. So Susan Shepard would have been great. Also, Ruth Ann Music, who collected all kinds of Appalachian folklore. I would have
Hmm.
loved to met her and talk with her. As far as living, I'm a huge fan of the show Supernatural. And one thing that I adore about that show is the amount of research that they've put into it. Like, there's not a character on there, for the most part, that doesn't exist in some form in folklore.
Hmm.
And I appreciate that. And they usually make them line up. I mean, even like little Easter eggs. Like, there's this angel on there named Castiel, who, unless you were watching it in real time, you wouldn't recognize this, but Castiel is the angel of Thursday. When Castiel made his appearance in the show, Supernatural was premiering on Thursdays. Like these little kind of things that they did. Whoever did that is someone that I want to meet. And I would like to think, I don't know if it's true, but Eric Kripke is the writer of the show. I would love to meet him and talk with him, one, to find out the inspiration behind the stories, and to find out if he did the research to connect all these dots. If he did, or whoever else was with him, I want to meet that person too, if there was somebody else involved. But whoever did that show and put the research into it and the folklore behind it, that's who is my dream person to meet
That
and
would be a
interview.
fascinating interview. Wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Didn't know
Yeah.
that.
I mean, they're amazing with it when it comes to that show. I mean, some things might be stretched a little bit, but there's always this core that they absolutely have rooted in folklore, and I admire that. So,
That's really cool. What's the most interesting or surprising thing you've encountered just since you've been doing this show? I know it hasn't been that long.
since doing Lore, you know,
Hmm.
um, the most interesting or surprising thing. Well, there's an episode that'll be coming out in a few weeks where I nearly cried at the end because one of my favorite, like what I like to do at the end is tell my guests, tell me a story. Because I just, I'll do that with people and face to face, tell me a story.
Oh, I like
And
that.
yeah, so I always end it with tell me a story. Sometimes I'll set it up like a scenario. Other times it'll just be, hey, tell me a story. And so I get really fascinated by the way that things shift depending on who it is, how they tell their story. But the very last interview that I did, which won't be out for a few weeks, um, the story actually brought me to tears. I did my best to not cry. Like I'm not like sobbing on camera or anything, but like I could feel my nose start to tickle a little bit, and I'm like, suck it up. We're not crying on camera. Um, but the story that she told me was moving in that there was it had to do with a town that had suffered from, and why it's escaping me, I don't know. What is wrong? Like I can't remember. It was some sort of outbreak, like a pandemic of sorts, or an epidemic. Because I guess I don't know if it was pandemic at the time, but anyway, there were a bunch of people dying, and this one doctor stayed to help them, and he had fled his home country due to war and persecution and so on, and he came here to help, like to be a doctor here. And when the whole town fell into this sickness, he was the only doctor who stayed. And I'm thinking he probably, I mean, this is just me putting my own thoughts on it. He probably stayed because he had been in similar situations where everybody left. So he stayed, he ended up contracting the illness and he died. And as she was doing her research into this cemetery, because that's what brought her to all of this, she found his headstone and it was broken and ruined. And so she started a crowdfunding campaign to replace it. And now there is a new stone with a plaque with his story on it. And like the fact that she went through all of that, she found this story, she went through all of that. I'm just sitting there with tears in my eyes, like, that's great. Like I would love to do that someday too.
Wow.
Um, so yeah,
Wow.
that was probably one of the most moving moments that I've had on the show. But
That's
that'll be out in a
incredible.
few weeks. Yeah.
Looking forward to that one. Yeah. That's really cool. Wow. I'm a cry now.
Yeah.
Um, I have a couple like rapid fire general strangeness questions I'd love to bounce off you, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. What cases or a case maybe that what's a case that has like subverted your expectations or surprised you in the course of researching it?
Hmm. Uh, that's really surprised me. I feel like almost any of them surprised me at some point because when you start to dig deep enough, somehow they all get connected. In one
Hmm.
way or another, it all comes around to be connected. Um, I think probably the breadth of everything is surprising as far as like something like Dogman, for example. A lot of people that have those experiences, it's evil, it's nasty, it's something that you don't want to encounter. It's something I wouldn't want to encounter, but that's also partly because I'm afraid of big dogs. So one on two legs that's taller than me is going to really mess me up. Um, but then there are other people that have had encounters with that same type of creature, but it's safe and it's like a guardian and it's protecting. And so I think how things can be like the juxtaposition between any of these creatures. It's the same thing. I mean, there's stories of aggressive Bigfoot, and then ones that aren't as
Mhm.
aggressive, some that are just watching. Um, but yeah, that I don't know. That's just surprising that there's always, and probably something that's also most surprising that gets me every time, and I just don't understand it, is the infighting in all of these groups. I don't get that at all. That it more than the subject itself are the people when they
Mhm.
start to get territorial over over these things. I don't understand that at all. And it's in every part, every community. It's not just the cryptid or paranormal world. It's all over the
Sure.
place. That's just
Yeah.
humans. But like, it just really baffles me when it comes to something like Bigfoot or Dogman or what have you, that there are these little factions, which have nothing really, I don't think, to do with the subject, but people being people.
Yeah.
So that's
I
always
definitely agree
surprising.
with you. Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't expect. I feel like I'm saying that's interesting a lot, but you say a lot of interesting things.
Thanks.
um, I've heard you mention the Wendigo a few times in conversation in different places. I'd love to know what
Yeah.
about that one is so interesting to you.
I don't know. I don't know why that one fascinates me so much. I don't know if it's the idea of a human completely transforming into something so sinister rather than it being a creature that's just born like there's that shifting moment. Something has happened, which I guess happens with like in the case of the Ruru and some of those stories and stuff too. You've crossed a boundary and so you transform, but I don't know. It's the look of it, at least the way that I see it. I mean, I know that there's different ways that are interpreted, but it's either terrifying or cool looking, depending on which way you look at it. It's terrifying when the skin is all tight and taut and there's like no gums or whatever. That's absolutely terrifying. But the ones where it's like a skull, yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah,
But the ones where it's the like the antlers and the skull, there's just something so ancient about it that just I don't know. The ancient stuff fascinates me, and that just makes it feels so old.
yeah,
And that alone makes me like it more.
that's so cool. Yeah,
Not that I'd ever want to encounter one by any means, but it fascinates me to no end because it just seems so old and tied to the land, and that's a huge thing for me.
that's really cool. Yeah, I've heard you mention it a few times. It's like I have to ask her about the Wendigo. That's important.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mothman 46 asks, "Are the Matskis really cool in person?"
You know what? They are. They are really cool in person. Um, they're really amazing people, super kind. And Mark is somebody that I got to interview him a couple times now on the Lore You Know, but um, and I don't think that he knew this until the first interview in Lore You Know, but he was somebody that early on I had told Seth before I was involved with SDM, I want to meet him because I recognized as a researcher that he really does his work. He thoroughly researches stuff, and I admire that. And so it was a real like it's a treat to work with him. Andy is only 18 years old. I cannot stress this enough. He's 18 and so articulate and so intelligent. I I am blown away. Like I would be so tickled if my kids could be as well spoken. And I don't know. He's a really good person. And I also love to watch those two interact because as a parent, I like to watch Mark's face. Anytime that Andy speaks, you just see this pride. Like he knows that Andy's awesome and
That's
he's proud
so
of him.
cool.
And I love to watch that interaction between them. But yeah, they're really cool. They're good people. Um, yeah, they're good people. That's the best compliment that I could say as somebody from Appalachia. They're good.
That's that's so wholesome and cool. I love that. I love that. Yeah, I haven't had the chance to meet either of them yet, but I've obviously always enjoyed their work. So
Hmm.
they have the vibe of being really cool people.
Yeah, they are.
Jordan Campfire asked, "Are dolls creepy simply as facsimiles of creepy children, which are obviously the creepiest of all creepy people?" I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say yes
Yeah,
on that one.
kids can be pretty creepy for sure. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess, but there's like, yeah, I think it's because the idea of something that could be haunted has a face to it. So whether it's I mean, a doll is easy, but if it were, I don't know, you can go to eBay and people will claim all kinds of stuff's haunted. I'm not going to be scared of a haunted ring necessarily, but a doll that has a face and could look at me, yeah, that might be a little scarier. But
Yeah.
also, I guess I'm not going to, I don't know, I say this as somebody who takes rocks from everywhere we go, but like, there are certain places I'm not going to take stuff from that would scare me more than a doll would. Um,
I
but
do
yeah,
that
no, kids
too.
can be
That's cool.
creepy. Yeah, everywhere. I take stuff from, I mean, right now you can't, like, these are all rocks from when we were in Kentucky.
Oh, cool.
There's always rocks in my purse, in my computer bag. Like, we just came back from Chestnut Ridge and there were rocks in Seth's Jeep that were up in the cup holder. They're like, "What is this?" I'm like, "Leave it alone. It's for whenever
Leave
we
it
get home."
alone. That's cool, dude.
Yeah.
I started doing that this year. I got rocks from Folk and Point Pleasant, and then a
Nice.
couple other spots. But that's
Yeah.
cool. I love that you
Yeah,
do that.
yeah.
Heather asks, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but Heather asks, have you visited Yorktown, Virginia? I heard Mark say something about visiting a historical place in Virginia once. We have a ton of ghost sightings here because of the history.
That's really cool. No, I haven't been in Virginia all that much. My sister lives down there, but I haven't been down to see her in a while. I mean, or she doesn't all the time, but if there's visitation, it's usually her coming up to Ohio to see mom. But no, I'm not overly familiar with Virginia at
Hmm.
all. She lives in a place called I'm gonna forget it now because I'm trying to think of it. That's the only reason.
It'll come to
Don't
you when you're falling
remember.
asleep later.
It'll come to me later, but yeah, she lives in some small town in Virginia, and that's pretty much all I know about Virginia. Is
Mm.
where my sister lives. But yeah,
Fair enough. Yeah. I'd never been to
yeah.
Virginia until very recently.
Mm.
Cody asks, this seems like an important question. I don't know what's going on here, but Cody asks, have you had any more dreams of a demon showing up while doing yoga?
No, nope, nope. I haven't. That was the one time I must have said that on a podcast that I don't recall sharing. It was probably Shannon's. Now I think about it, because it probably would have been with Lady Anne. Yeah, the house that we're in now. I had a dream before we moved here that I was like doing yoga or whatever on the yoga mat that I have, exercising, yoga, whatever, because I really don't do that much yoga, but um and there was this thing at the window, the sliding glass door that we have, and it was red and like its face was weird, and it wasn't for another month or so until I saw Insidious, and that face of that thing is what I saw, but I had never seen Insidious. So when I saw the movie, I'm like, oh, that was it. That was like what it was. Um, but yeah, that was the only time I had a dream of anything showing up while I was
Okay.
exercising.
Well, I'm glad that hasn't happened again. That doesn't sound awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it hasn't happened in waking life, so that's even better. That would have been bad.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I'm glad for that for you. Unrefined asked if you have found any more vertebrae.
Okay, so not here, but here's another thing that I collect are bones whenever we're out. If I find bones while we're out, I will also grab them. And
Cool.
actually, when we were at Land Between the Lakes recently, um, Zach might have seen it actually before I did. Yeah, I think Zach did, because I think he's the one who picked it up. I know he's the one who picked it up. There was a whole spine of a fish at the edge of the lake, and I'm like, "Ooh, get it, let's get it." And so it's home now too. Very spiky, but yeah, it's like single vertebrae that like was left in the woods, which is what they're referring to.
Okay.
Um, it's completely possible, but it's been really cold, and I haven't gone into the woods. Uh, I haven't been there since like New Year's Day. I haven't gone up into the woods because it's been too cold. So it's possible that some of the crystals that I have up there are gone and things are replaced, but I haven't checked.
That's very interesting information.
Yeah,
The bone. That's cool, dude.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
Seth says, I can't hear anything. I'm at a punk show. Enjoy. Okay. Awesome.
yeah,
Thanks, Seth.
yeah. Good. Thanks for tuning in anyway, friend.
Thanks, dude.
Uh, yeah, he's at a Flogging Molly concert, I think,
They're
or
one of my favorite bands of all time. Oh my
it
God,
might not be
really?
Flogging Molly. It might be the other one. What's the other one?
Dropkick Murphys?
Yeah, it might be one of, I can't remember. That's part of the joke is that he got tickets to it and he wasn't overly familiar with either band and mixed them up. And I don't, so now I don't know. I don't know which one he's at. He's at one of those two.
One of those Irish rock bands. Yeah.
That's right.
Let's see. Heather wants to know how you feel about the X-Files.
So I actually haven't watched the X-Files. I think one episode. Um, because when X-Files was out, where I lived, we didn't have anything but the antenna. And I don't know what channel X-Files was on, but we did not get it where I was. So I didn't get to watch it. I should watch it now because everybody, I mean, it's like a staple, but I
Yeah,
just
everybody
haven't
talks
gotten
about
around
it.
to it.
I didn't
Yeah,
watch it till recently, and I just kind of did it overhead. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Last question for you. How do
okay.
you feel about renaming the Texas Chupacabra and calling it the Texas Terror Dog? I have to ask
Well,
everybody this.
I will say that I followed along with that. I didn't vote in it, but I followed along with that whole thing, and Texas Terror Dog is absolutely what I was rooting for. So I was really excited when that got picked, because I just thought, well, that makes the most sense and isn't completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because some of those were hilarious.
Yeah, I was like,
Um,
guys, call it whatever you want, but we're probably not gonna call it this one. We'll see
yeah,
what people vote for, but we're probably not gonna call it.
yeah. But Texas Terror Dog, I think, makes a lot more sense. I've been also confused by the Chupacabra thing as far as being so vastly different in one area versus the other. So I agree with that, the renaming, because it's far less confusing. One can
I
be the
agree.
Chupacabra, and then we can have the Texas Terror Dog, and it's pretty self-explanatory at that point.
Awesome. Thank you. Not gonna lie, that's exactly what I was hoping you would say. Where can people find you online? Where should we what should we keep an eye on?
Well, if you're on Instagram like you are right now, you can find me. It's probably on there, but Pagan Historian is my Instagram. Um, Follow Small Town Monsters, and you can find me in different things there. The YouTube, um,
You're in this
our
book.
YouTube channel. Oh yeah, I am briefly in that book. That's true. You can find me in that book,
Yeah,
um, the On
this
the
book.
Trail Companion. Um, you can find me in the Feminine Macabre, Volume 1 and soon to be Volume 3. Listen to the Lord you know. Hey, if you haven't backed our Kickstarter, could you do that, please?
You still
For
yes,
Small
there's
Town
still
Monsters.
time. There's
There's
still
still
time.
time.
How many days
Yeah,
do
I
we
sent,
have?
we
It's
have
like
nine, well, if you
nine or
don't
ten
count
days,
today,
right?
we have 8 days left because I just sent out the newsletter this morning and it was 9 days as of this morning when I sent the newsletter out. So
Yeah.
we got about a week.
Okay.
Um, and it would be cool because we are very close to getting to the third stretch goal, which is a DVD pack that includes Beyond the Trail tie-in in Alaska, which we will be doing.
Ooh.
So it'll go with Last Frontier, and then Beyond the Trail will be with it. Um, so that's our last stretch goal, our third stretch goal, and we are less than 8,000 away from that. So
Oh,
if
we
we can
can
get
do
that,
that.
yeah, let's hope. I mean, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that's it. Follow, I mean, Small Town Monsters and Pagan Historian. I have a thing like a what's it called? Linktree that has all my stuff on it on Instagram. So yeah, there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Heather, thank you so much. I've been excited to talk to you for a really long time, so I really appreciate
Yay.
this.
Yeah, I'm excited that you asked me to talk. I still remember meeting you at Cryptid Bash and how giddy you were to be there, and even
We,
at Cryptid Con. I look forward to you and your wife showing up and
oh, thank
the
you.
big smiles and stuff.
We look forward to
It's a
seeing
great
you
feeling.
guys.
Yeah.
We were like 10 feet away from you, and I was like, Sarah, that's Heather Moser. She was like, well, just go say hi. And I was like, I can't do that. It's Heather Moser. But
That that was the first event I think that I've been to where people like there were a couple people that like said my name that I, you know, they were like, "Oh, Heather," and I turn around and I'm like, "Oh, hi,"
hello.
or because of Instagram, they'd be like, "Pagan historian, right?" Yeah, and you're, like Conjure Dust Designs. Now I know it's Danner,
Yes.
but like, I'm like you're okay. That's Conjure Dust Designs. I was telling different people, I'm like, okay, I know that person is, like that's Mystic Novelty Co. That is
Yeah.
American Snallygaster Museum. That's Cryptid Batty. Like I had the names of their handles
Yeah.
on Instagram. Like that's Hey Strangeness. That's how I reference you
That was
because
one
if
of
I
my
say
favorite
Aaron,
parts.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like this. That's Hey Strangeness right there.
There are worse things
So.
to be known for, I think. No, I'll take that. Man, well,
Oh,
Heather, thank you so much. It's been an hour. Please thank your friends and
yay.
family and whoever I kept you from for your time. I really appreciate it.
Will do. Thanks for having me.
Yes, ma'am. I'll hope to talk to you again soon.
Oh, yeah. Bye.
All right, bye. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for all your questions. I love doing these, you guys, and it wouldn't be this much fun without you. Be back next week with Greg Morrow, and then it's time for March. All right, good night. Bye.